Good evening, everyone. It's good to see so many of you here this evening. Tonight is February 25th, 2025, and I'm pleased that we have Pastor Chip Dean and his 5-year-old daughter, Brooklyn. She will be accompanying him as he provides our invocation, and she's a student at Kemp Elementary School, and she is chosen as one of 4 miracle children of CHOA, our Children's Healthcare of Atlanta. So it's an honor to have you both here tonight. Our invocation will be followed by the pledge, which will be brought by firefighter Michael Merritt of Station 1 A Shift. For those of you able and willing, please stand for both our invocation and pledge.
Thank you. Let's pray together. Heavenly Father, we just thank you so much that you have promised that you are with us. God, you are omnipresent. There is nowhere we can go where you are not. And so, God, we just thank you so much for your presence among us. God, we thank you that you are the God of all peace. And that's what we pray for tonight. God, we just pray for your peace. Lord, we just thank you so much for the governmental system that you have put in place in our lives, in our country, for our good, for our provision, for our protection, and for our safety. God, we thank you so much for those who serve. We thank you so much for those who lead. We thank you so much for those who protect. God, we thank you so much for those who guide. And Father, what an honor it is to live in Cobb County. God, what an honor it is to be a part of this incredible community. And so, Father, we just pray in Jesus' name tonight that you would be our peace. God, we ask that you would give unity, that you would give wisdom in the decisions made, and God, in everything. Father, we know that you are a God of life and a God of renewal. And we pray that you would just continue to renew our community, our surrounding cities, and our county. God, we pray, Lord, that we would just continue to love one another, to minister to one another, to serve one another. And God, it would all be for your glory. God, we love you, and we again thank you for this opportunity just to serve you and to serve one another in Jesus' name. And all God's people said,
Amen. If you'll join me in the pledge, please. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
You may be seated, and our meeting is called to order. Certainly want to thank you, Pastor Chip, for that impactful invocation, and also thank you, Firefighter Merritt, for being here this evening and providing the pledge. We do not have any presentations this evening, so we will go into our homestead exemption discussion. That presentation will be brought by Finance and our Tax Assessor and Support Service Director, will be followed by a vote of the Board of Commissioners on this matter. With that, I will turn things over to you, and just let me add, accompanying them is also Dante. He's with our Association of County Commissioners of Georgia, and thank you for being here this evening.
Good evening, Chairwoman, Commissioners, County Manager. This is our 3rd public hearing on the opt-out of the statewide adjusted base year ad valorem homestead exemption for Cobb County as defined by Georgia law. Stephen White will go through our quick presentation, and staff will be available to answer any questions.
Thank you.
Good evening, Commissioners, Chairwoman, County Manager. Thank you for the opportunity of presenting for the final time House Bill 581. We'll be happy to go through the slides and then entertain any questions that you may have. So as you are all aware, House Bill 581 creates a homestead exemption that limits the amount of increase of the taxable value for homesteaded properties to no more than the inflation rate, and that is provided to us by the Revenue Commissioner, the Revenue Commissioner of the state of Georgia, and that is tied to the Consumer Price Index. Some provisions of the bill, this does allow local governments to opt out if they so choose. So that would, of course, be the Board of Commissioners, the cities, and the Board of Educations that we have here in Cobb County. They will all make their own decisions and are doing that currently. This does authorize local governments with this new homestead exemption to levy a new sales tax that would be used to offset the limit that's provided. The bill does not remove, and this is very important, does not remove current exemptions such as school tax exemption or the current existing homestead float that we have for our county general fund. Very important to note, this does not touch the school tax exemption. So what's the impact? What happens if the county stays in? And we use the term stay in because this is law now. The only decision is to opt out if that is what is decided. Well, there's no impact to the general fund because the law specifically states that you go with the program that is best for the taxpayer. And in our situation here in Cobb County, the homestead float is a freeze on the taxable value, whereas the 581 float is limited in its increase. So if the county were to stay in, there is no impact to the general fund. The fire fund is where the impact is seen. The fire fund does not have a homestead exemption on it. If the 581, if the House Bill 581 were to stay in place, the fire fund would be limited in the amount that it could increase on the taxable value side each year. It's important to note that the Revenue Commissioner has determined that that number would be 0 for 2025. So really this program would start in 2026 as far as the limits. What happens if the county opts out? Well, again, there's no impact to the general fund because we currently have that program in place. So it's a total freeze on the taxable value. But the fire fund would see the normal increases that are tied to the fair market value increases that the assessor's office has placed on properties' values as we have seen in the past. So that kind of outlines the differences in regards to the two programs. We're happy to entertain any questions that you may have.
Thank you. I appreciate that presentation. I will open up the public hearing for any citizens desiring to speak to do so, and then following that, I will provide opportunity for commissioners to weigh in. Thank you. With that, I'll go ahead again and open up this public hearing. We'll take an unlimited number of speakers to address the commissioners on this matter and this matter only. You will have up to 3 minutes to address commissioners. Please note that if you are new to this process, that you are to state your name when you, or before you begin your presentation. With that, Kathy, you can begin.
Good evening, Chairperson Cuthbert and all Cobb County Commissioners. My name is Kathy Slough. I live in Marietta, Georgia, in Cobb County. I've owned my home since 2004, and I rented 2 years prior to that. So I've been on both sides of renting and a homeowner. I'm here to ask all of you Cobb County Commissioners to opt out of House Bill 581. The future of our property taxes, everyone in this room, including you guys, and potential rent is resting in the hands of you. The critical decision will be made tonight. If we do not opt out of 581, we face an automatic yearly property tax increase, is my understanding. This means that not only will our property taxes rise, but rents will also increase, as rental properties will no longer be capped at fair market value. As I said, I've done both. In our complex, our rents are average around $2,100. How can a young family trying to live the American dream afford that if it keeps going up? This urgent matter affects all of us in the future if we do not act. HB 581 was intended, it was good to curb local government tax hikes by enhancing transparency. However, it's my understanding and my opinion, local government lobbyists have manipulated into a vehicle for tax increases. In summary, I'm retired. I live on Social Security. I don't have a Mercedes. I have an older car. Now is the time to act. Please, all of you, listen to us. It's pretty full here. And please opt out of House Bill 581 with your vote tonight. Thank you for your time.
We'll take our next speaker.
Good evening, commissioners, community leaders, fellow Cobb residents. My name is Cassandra McCory, and I'm honored to serve as the president of the Cobb Association of Realtors, the largest trade association in Cobb County. We proudly represent over 2,000 real estate professionals and small business owners who work every day to build strong communities, support home ownership, and contribute to the local economy. The discussion on House Bill 581 is not just about policy, it's about the voice of the voters of Georgia who overwhelmingly approved this measure at the ballot box. In fact, this measure passed with significant support, reflecting a clear demand from residents for property tax stability and relief. This legislation was designed to provide homeowners with more predictability in their property taxes, ensuring that tax increases are tied to inflation rather than market volatility. For many homeowners, retirees, and business owners, this type of tax structure is critical in allowing them to plan for the future, protect their investments, and remain in their communities. While HB 581 allows local governments to opt out, it also raises an important question: what is the most beneficial tax system for Cobb County residents? There are provisions within the bill that offer alternative revenue solutions, such as the Flexible Local Option Sales Tax, FLOST. This mechanism allows municipalities to diversify their revenue streams in ways that lessen the burden on property owners by distributing tax responsibilities more evenly across all residents and visitors, not just homeowners. As realtors, we understand that tax policy directly affects housing affordability, home values, and economic growth. The key consideration in this discussion should be how to create the most balanced, predictable, and consumer-friendly tax system for Cobb County residents, one that ensures homeowners aren't subject to sudden, steep tax increases while also supporting the needs of local government. As the largest trade association in Cobb County, we are committed to being a resource and a partner in discussions that impact real estate, property ownership, and economic development. We advocate for policies that support stable home ownership, a thriving small business environment, and responsible growth. We encourage the Commission to continue engaging with stakeholders, local municipalities, and residents to determine the most equitable and sustainable approach to property taxation in Cobb County. Regardless of the path forward, we stand ready to provide market insights, collaborate on solutions, and ensure that the voices of homeowners and business owners are represented in these important discussions. Thank you for your time and for allowing us the opportunity to contribute to the conversation. Thank you.
Good evening, ladies. Donald Barth. I tell you what, HB 581's been nothing but a joke. The first time it went on the ballot, it was a joke. Nobody could understand it. That was the purpose in it. The simplest thing to do is vote no. When you don't understand, kick it to the curb, vote no. We all heard this. The county's going to opt out, the county's going to opt out, the county's going to opt out. Nobody believes it. You know why? No transparency here. You have brought in a couple of ringers. And I'm going to tell you, one of them's so full of crap. I'm sure he stained the carpet while he was standing here. Now, that's not fair to the people that you bring ringers in here and try to force it upon us. It's not fair. In fact, it's wrong. You are elected to represent the people. The people feel like they have an existing system that is protecting us for the most part. Sure, we've got some commissioners and a chairwoman that help jack the prices up just so they could reach in our pockets a little deeper. That's wrong too. The prices are adjusting down. We know why, because it was artificially inflated to begin with. We cannot keep going like this. We know that 581 is such a lie, and I'm proud to say I live in the city of Marietta, and hopefully they voted it out tonight, opted out. There is no opt-in. You're stuck in, but you can darn sure get out. And I'm hoping that you will listen to the people, not to these people. They don't count. Listen to the voters. Opt out, please. Thank you.
Good evening, Commissioners. Thank you for allowing me to present. My name is Donna Gallagher, and I'm from Smyrna in Monique's district. And I'm urging you to opt out. I'd like to kind of give you a little bit of background. I actually voted for House Bill 581 when it was brought up in the constitutional amendment because I thought that it was really just a cap at 5%. That was the max. I had seen my property taxes going up each year, sometimes 18%, 30%, just there was no end to it. And I understand that the spirit of this bill was to limit that and to limit the amount of an increase to just 5%. And it wasn't until afterwards that I understood there were a lot of hooks in it, and unfortunately these gentlemen didn't present the hooks that I understood later on. One was the, actually, while we're here, guys, how many of you guys were confused on the ballot when you voted for it? Can you raise your hands, please? That's a significant amount of things. So this 62% statistic that was just given by the previous speaker, I challenge that because I'm not the only one who is ignorant and confused about it. But I've done the research now. And like I said, this is an automatic increase of 5% per year. It's not flat until there's a fair market value change in your property. So this also goes to, as we were saying, the affordable housing. We've talked about affordable housing at these commission meetings before, and I know Ms. Cupid and Monique, you are fans of that affordable housing, but you can't have it both ways if you support this bill. As we said, if the taxes keep going up, the affordability of the county, goes out the window too. So you really can't do that. The other thing I learned about this bill is that it doesn't decrease ever. Your property value goes down and your taxes do not go down. They stay the same. How fair is that? Did any of you guys understand that? No. All right, so I think we've got a consensus here in this room. I assume that the people have actually researched this and have emailed you and contacted you, have said the same thing, that I regret my vote on this. Please do not listen to the previous. And the other thing I have understood about this is the bill has changed multiple times since it was introduced. It was placed on the ballot as a, shall a constitutional amendment be prepared with this effect? But the actual language is changing all the time. And you guys have done a great job of protecting Cobb County and having a really good tax plan as we have it now. Your plan that you have now is better. Ma'am, sorry, your time is up. Your time's up.
Hi, I'm Maria Cooper. All right, I have 3 points. Ouch. The first one is the only reason that this bill was passed in November is because of the way it was written. It was ridiculously misleading. Ridiculously misleading. It couldn't have been worse if they had tried to make it worse. It was so not right. So against hardworking taxpayer people. It was absolutely outrageous. So that's the only reason that that bill was passed in November. Number 2, the Cobb Realtors Association, the lady that just spoke a little while ago, that the group that she represented. They are corporate owners, developers. They are not your plain Jane, hardworking Cobb citizens who pay taxes. Okay? And of course, the way that this bill was finagled and whatever, it makes sense that it would be bad against us hardworking, tax-paying Cobb citizens and for corporate developers. The third point I want to make is, what does it tell you? This should tell you everything you need to know. When you go on the website of Cobb, it tells you about this, and it says Cobb's existing situation, I forget what the wording is better for citizens than this HB 581. That should tell you everything you need to know about how to vote tonight, right? It says it right there, that the existing Cobb, the way it's set up, the existing Cobb thing is better, it's more beneficial to taxpayers than this HB 581. That is like, no duh. Thank you.
Hello, good evening, Chairwoman, Chairman. My name is Mark Wolin. I live in Smyrna. I've owned a home in Smyrna for 25 years. So right off the bat, I want to say I appreciate what you're doing. I'm an ex-president of an HOA for 270 units. I can tell you it's a thankless job, and I know how much time you put in. But I just wanted to make one point about this bill, and that is the point on how it's based on inflation. So I did some research on that. And it sounds like a good point up front, but when you look at historical inflation rates, it's not a very good promise. I know you can't see this, but just recently, 2022, inflation rate was 7%. Sorry, 6.45%. 2021 was 7%. But the point I want to make is, from 1973 to 1981, we had a 9-year stretch. The average inflation rate was 9.25% for 9 years in a row. Then we also have some outstanding years, 1946 after World War II, 18%. Then we had the Great Depression where it ran 20% for 2 years. Now, I know the bill doesn't allow you to raise taxes to meet the inflation rate, but it doesn't say you can't do it either. So nobody's talked about this, because that's what it's based on. So I wanted to bring that up to your point. I want to make sure that you please consider that, and please vote no on this bill. Thank you.
Hello, my name is Andre Norwood. I own a real estate appraiser company, and I used to be the tax appraiser for the city of Dunwoody for DeKalb County for several years. I just have a couple of questions about this HB 581. If it goes forward, will the people still be able to file an appeal and freeze that value for 3 years? That's one question. So currently, how it stands now, we can file an appeal and freeze it for 3 years. And let's say if that value is at $500,000 and it goes up 10%, we're still locked at $500,000. But if it goes, the value of my house goes below $500,000, I always get the lower value. That's how it's currently working. So there is a difference if HB 581 passes, as far as we won't be able to file an appeal anymore. Is that correct?
This is not a dialogue, but we can answer it afterwards.
Okay, I just wanted to know. And I am a resident of Smyrna for the last 25 years. And with this increase as far as the economy annually, if the value of our homes go down, is it still an automatic increase regardless? And is an automatic increase built on what the current value is? So if my house is $500,000, it drops to $485,000, it's still going to add to continuously go higher. So there's no way to stop it, no way to slow it down. I just want to get a better understanding of what we, okay? And thank you very much.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Timothy Parson. What I really wanted to say is that I hope that you guys will find it to opt out of this. For me personally and the people that's behind me, you have a lot of working class people and, of course, some senior people in here as well. And, you know, raising taxes anytime you're getting to talk about that, it has an effect on these people that are on fixed incomes and things like that. Yes, I'm a little bit younger and I'm able to work, but I'm also aware of what the community makes up, and this does not help the community. If we're going to look at, we want to, you know, better the community and things like that, and you want to raise revenue, this is not one thing to do. It's simply place it back onto the people that are working, that are trying to build a community. The last time that I was here, I currently spoke about transparency and budgets and things like that. And so then when you're asking for more money, I think there needs to be transparency of where the money is going. It's no different if I was to go to a financial institution, they simply would ask me for documents if they're gonna give me more money. And so then if you guys want more money, I think that's the way to go. And with that being said, most companies that people give their money to or to invest their money into, they're under the SEC. So they're supposed to provide financial disclosure. I don't see in the United States Constitution, and I sure don't see in the Georgia Constitution, where you're not supposed to even be transparent with the people that are investing into this community. And so then I think that if we're going to move forward, transparency is the key, and that's how we move forward. That's it.
Good evening, Denny Wilson. When this bill was first talked about, even before it was introduced and was put on the ballot, I was all for it in the beginning before it went through the different legislators and all the additional changes were added. But here's the language that was on the ballot. Shall the Constitution of Georgia be amended so as to authorize the General Assembly to provide by general law for a statewide homestead exemption that serves to limit increases in the assessed values of homestead, but which any county, consolidated government, municipality, or local school system may opt out upon the completion of certain procedures. Now, why would the legislators put a bill on the ballot and tell you up front that you can opt out? Because if this was a good thing for the taxpayers, and I've been in Georgia over 40 years, I've never seen the legislators put a resolution on the ballot and give local governments the option to not enforce the law, because they write the law. So, and in answer to the gentleman's question, and Chairwoman Cupid, I learned this from you. And this is another thing that I didn't know about the bill until you and Stephen White told me. if you file an appeal, it used to be you got to freeze for 3 years, win or lose. As of January 1st, what I was told by you of 2025, you have to win the appeal in order to get a 2-year freeze. And I didn't know that until you told me. I didn't know that that bill generated that law. So now the appeal process have changed because they're saying they have a lot of people who are filing appeals just to get the 3-year freeze. And what I'm being told now is, and I don't know how true this is just what a little birdie told me, the legislators are now crafting a bill which will not allow counties to opt out. So I'm asking you guys tonight to just go ahead and opt out and then see what they bring you in the near future, because I'm sure they're going to bring you something back. And state overtake of homestead exemptions in the county, I don't think is a good idea. I really don't. And I know you guys know we have one of the best homestead exemptions pretty much in the state. And we can keep it that way. If you look at this bill...
Ma'am, your time's up.
You will see that this bill was crafted by what we do here in Cobb County right now.
Hello, my name is Ann Parsons. Good evening, Commissioners. I am here to urge you to opt out of HB 581. This bill was supposed to bring transparency to property taxes, but instead lobbyists turned it into a backdoor tax increase. HB 581 allows automatic property tax hikes every year, without public hearings, without a vote, and without accountability. It's a politician's dream. More money, no consequences. Without HB 581, taxpayers would receive the rollback rate with their assessment notices, make it clear when you are proposing a tax increase, no more hiding behind keeping the rate the same while raking in more of our money. When times are hard, when people lose jobs, struggle to make ends meet, staying opt into HB 581 means the county keeps spending like nothing happened, living high off the hog. While taxpayers tighten their belts, that is unacceptable. Opting out is the only responsible choice. Remaining HB 581 means endorsing taxation without representation. Tax increases that happen automatically with no one to hold accountable. HB 581 is a shameless con, a bill corrupted by lobbyists who pretend to advise local governments while sneaking in tax hikes under the guise of a better deal. It's not a better deal. It's a scam. And we're not falling for it. Vote opt out. Stand with the taxpayers, not the lobbyists. Send a message to the state that we will not accept hidden tax increases disguised as reform. Thank you.
There are some public spaces that prefer people to stand versus applaud. I have not imposed that, and I can recognize your support. I just ask that you please not verbalize that support while somebody is speaking. Just let them finish their comments. I have no problem with you applauding somebody. I just tend to have issues when people are booed and something negative is stated. But if you can just help us and just not speaking while the speaker is speaking, that helps us to focus on their comment. Thank you. Yes, ma'am.
Hello, my name is Robbie Huck. I am a resident of the city of Marietta who voted to opt out for almost 5 o'clock this afternoon. And I'm just here as one more vote or one more voice of the citizenry who believes that that question on our ballot, it's not the ballot, it is our ballot. The people pay for it. It belongs to the people. Was that we didn't have enough information on that ballot question to have an informed decision. And even right now, after researching a little bit after the fact, because I voted no, they lost me right when it said, do I want to amend the state constitution? I said, no, it's gotten us here, and it's pretty good. So even the people in the finance departments all can tell you when I ask questions about this local sales tax, which it didn't say on the ballot, and you might be able, you're opening up another way for the governments to have a local sales tax. And correct me if I'm wrong on this, but I believe that the law is that all the local sales tax are charged on groceries. They're charged one more sales tax on alcohol sales, one more sales tax at gasoline, which is charged at the wholesale level, which means as the price of a gallon of gas increases, that bite out of our wallets is going to be just a little bit bigger. And so, like, who in their right mind would say, yeah, I want to give the government another chance to have more local sales tax? It's not good for people who have a low income and spend the majority of their money locally. If you spend the majority of your money on living, groceries, maybe if you drink beer on Friday, you want to buy a six-pack and you have to have gas to get to work, all of those costs are going to go up. And when they say, you know, like, oh, it's meant as, and nobody has been able to really define for me, you know, in what instance would the sales tax be added? And someone suggested that, well, maybe it would write down some of the property tax. But if that is like a millage rate decrease, that would mean that corporate owners and people who own investment property would get that decrease, and they might not even live in the state of Georgia. I mean, they might not even live in the United States, and they'll be getting a discount, while the people who have spend their money locally are going to be paying that increase on everything you need to live. And that's just not a fair trade, and that wasn't communicated.
Ma'am, sorry, your time's up.
Good evening, Commissioners. My name's Craig Harfoot. At this point, I would say, yeah, opt out. But in all this, you know, in all what came out of all these meetings, you know, what struck me is Georgia, you can run Georgia on 9% sales tax. But the state does 4%. It leaves the local governments to have 5%. But you choose to run SPLOST for schools and the roads. And all the road projects are basically the road builders embedded in our staff. You know, they actually have people in there. They run the SPLOST. And we build all these bigger and wider roads. Well, I think after you opt out, before you come back at us with any SPLOST or anything, you need to get the community involved, and let's do some numbers and see if there would be no sales, no property tax, could you run the government on 5%? And how much would that cost us? I mean, this needs like an analysis, and I'm not asking for people to spend money. Got plenty of bright people, and as long as you give us numbers that are good, it can be figured out. And this is not just our problem, it's the United States problem. I'm getting all this stuff and I send it to you from every state in the union has a problem. And it's all because of inflation. And it's like, God, since I built my house for $105,000, now it's appraised at $495,000. You know, it's nuts. And it's like you're not going to have affordable housing. You can't build affordable housing. Marietta tore down all the public housing to build more expensive stuff, which inflated it more. That's not a road to success. So I really would like to see, you know, and I'm reaching out right now, and I know there's people in this audience that can talk about it too, but it really needs discussed, because if we can't get our budget under control, I mean, right now they're acting like, oh, gold is going to 112,000 an ounce is basically what it would take for it to cover the national debt, which is insane. Since 1970, it was $42.50 an ounce for gold. So we're in a German, the global economy is like in a...
Sir, your time's up.
My name is Leslie Davis. I am here to ask you to vote no and to opt out. My understanding is that this would allow the property tax to be increased based on the inflation index, and it's saying up to that. It's not saying don't raise it. So I know it was mentioned earlier having stable tax policies, and I guess if by stable you mean you always want it to go up regardless of what the property values are, then this would be good, because the inflation will go up even if your house value goes down. And the fact that this wouldn't require you to hold hearings for us to have a say in it, it would just automatically do that. That means you can wash your hands of it and say, well, it wasn't me, it was this bill that allowed this. So who do we as the people hold accountable when the taxes go up every year? And the other thing that I understand about this is that it does not keep you from also raising the millage rate every year like the majority of you have been doing year after year. So does that mean that it goes up based on inflation and then you say, oh, we're going to keep the rate the same? Well, when your property tax or when your property value goes up, that means your property tax goes up. I'm also concerned about renters. I always come here every year and ask you to not raise the millage rate because they don't get that homestead exemption. And so this will just exacerbate that situation. And luckily I own my home, but I just see these rental prices. I don't know how people are doing it because the prices are just insane. And people can blame their landlords all they want to, but the landlords are getting charged these property taxes on an increased basis every year. And they can't just eat it. They have to pass it along to their renters. So I'd like to ask you once again, please vote against this and opt out. Thank you.
We'll take our next speaker.
I'm Leroy Lampkin. I live in Cobb County for the last 26 years. Let me start out by saying we trust you. We don't trust the legislature on this matter at all. It includes all of you. HB 581 was originally intended to create a floating homestead exemption that would prevent property taxes from increasing as home values rise, ensuring tax increases would only happen through transparent millage rate votes. Unfortunately, the bill was altered to include provisions that benefit special interests while potentially harming taxpayers. While the original intent was good, the final version contains changes leading to automatic tax increases, higher sales taxes, and less transparency. Cobb County currently has a floating homestead exemption on its general fund that will not change with or without HB 581. We trust the county. What does HB 581 do? Automatic property tax increases, even if home values decline. And many of this has already been described. I'm repeating some of it. Even if home values decline, property taxes would automatically increase each year according to an inflation index yet to be determined without requiring elected officials to vote on it. Allows up to an additional 3% sales tax increase. From 6% to 9%, that's a potential 50% increase in sales tax. Thank you, Lisa Cupid, for explaining that such a sales tax would have to go to a vote of the public. So that may not be a problem. The public is clearly going to vote it out. Next, no cap on property taxes. Elected officials can still vote to increase the millage rate, so there's no true protection, no true cap against tax hikes in HB 581. HB 581 allows income-producing properties to be valued above fair market value, leading to higher taxes for rental property, which increases rents. Tax assessment notices will no longer include an estimate of the tax owed, leaving taxpayers unaware of increases until it's too late to appeal or attend public hearings. Winning a tax appeal now only provides a 2-year freeze on your property's taxable value. Previously, filing an appeal automatically triggered the freeze. Members of the Board of Commissioners, again, we trust you to manage our property taxes, not the legislature. The legislature speaks to the entire state. All the counties are different. This is Cobb County. We're asking you to opt out. I would also ask you to consider a particular provision I've been thinking about for a long time. First responders, the police, and fire, in my opinion, should be exempted from property taxes completely. They risk their lives every day to protect us.
Sir, your time's up. Sorry.
We'll take our next speaker.
Hello, Commissioners. My name is Christina Flower. I have lived in District 3 for almost 10 years, and I have some things for you to think about. One of them is that clarity is honoring, which means when you put something on a ballot that is so confusing, it tells me that either you're paying the wrong people to write these things, or there's something terribly wrong in our government. I have a teenager that voted for the first time in this election. He has an extremely high IQ. And I had to take a half an hour to explain to him, by going through this bill, what exactly it meant. And so I ask you that whoever is writing these should be fired. Thank you. And I hope in the future that you can find someone else to word the ballot properly so that even, a teenager can understand it. I also would appreciate greatly if we had an audit of the county by a forensic accountant. I think that we need that because we have no idea where this money is going, and we'd like to know. Thank you very much for your time.
My name is Hope Notice, and I do hope you opt out. But my question is, when you get to the point of debate, once you opt out, is it permanent, or do you have to opt out again? Is this something that has to go on every year, or once you opt out, are we out? Thank you.
Good evening, Chairwoman, Commissioners, Mindy Seeger. I hadn't planned on speaking tonight, but as I'm listening, I just feel like I need to make a few points. I do trust you to make a decision on this and have been listening to the debates and reading some things online. I would just like to encourage my fellow citizens who are here tonight, many of you who may have some daytime opportunities. There's this wonderful place called the State Capitol. And this is where they literally have a motto and a reputation for they don't make good bills, they just make bad bills better. They literally joke about it. I wish I was kidding. I'm not. This is a perfect example of where they take bills and they hijack them and they make them into something that they're not. What we were presented with to vote on at the ballot box and what it is morphed into with the additional enabling legislation that is then presented to our county and all 159 counties to then implement is exactly what happens when the state does one thing and then lays it at the county feet at the local level to implement and operate on the operational level. And the ire that I hear in the room tonight, I think is valid. But I also think that, we are talking about this is what happens when the state creates things and intentionally does it in a way to obfuscate the voters. And the people that you want fired for writing bad bills, you fire them at the ballot box, and you just rehired most of them because they get rehired every year. So I would just like to encourage everyone. We have a great opportunity in Cobb County because it is just a short 30-minute drive to get down to the Capitol to go speak to these people in person. You can call them out on the rope line. Call me. I will take a day off if you plan it ahead of time. I will take you down there and go show you how to interact. I use that term loosely with your legislatures. They would love to speak to you. I'm also glad to see the ACCG can show up in Cobb County.
We'll take our next speaker. Are there any additional speakers?
Good evening, Commissioners.
Yes,
my
ma'am. Do you
name's
mind
Cammie Sanchez.
Pull that mic down just a little bit. Thank you.
You're welcome. My name's Cammie Sanchez, and I have lived in Cobb County for 45 years and in the same home in East Cobb for 40 years. I'm on a fixed income, and it's getting smaller every day. Okay? That income is not going as far. I voted against the state HB 581 originally because it said it was going to change the state constitution, and there wasn't enough information in there for me to decide that a constitution should be changed, and I'm glad I voted against it. I think what everybody has said tonight, I agree with it. We need to opt out, and our school system has already, the Cobb County School District has already opted out. And I think that we should follow the same rule and the same decision that they have made. Thank you very much for all that you do. Please take care of us, who are your constituents, who pay your salaries, who work hard and support our communities in all the things that we do as well. Thank you.
Hello, Chairwoman and Commissioners. Christine Rosman. I'm also going to be like everybody else and ask you to opt out. And the reason is that what's in it for us? Nothing. There isn't anything in it for us other than potentially having higher taxes, and also if and when the market starts going down, which it will, because we're so overinflated in Cobb County anyway, it will go down, and then we'll be paying taxes on what it gets appraised for. So it's very dangerous. It's dangerous for the citizens, and it might be nice for you guys because that means more money, but that's not nice for us. And as far as affordable housing goes, do the people that are in apartments know that they too are not going to be exempt from the impact of this? There's going to be a really negative impact of our dollars can't keep going. Like we can't keep going the way that we're going. And I hope that that you can be honest about it. You know, I know it must be hard because a certain commissioner is a realtor, and then the board of realtors comes up and says, yeah, this is going to be great. And so that has to be hard to push against that one. And I don't really understand is that if we don't get a 3-1 or a 4 saying, yes, we're going to opt out, does this mean we automatically have to opt in because we weren't able to opt out? Because if that's the case, maybe you didn't really even care about this vote because you knew that you'd still be able to opt in if you want to opt in. So thank you for your time, and I appreciate getting responses from 2 of the commissioners in my email today. And I know that you don't like to hear from us, but it's like, it's pretty black and white. Nobody wants it, okay? Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Betty Hayden, and I'm a resident and homeowner in Cobb County for 23 years. We are here to ask you to meet the needs of the people and not the agendas of politicians. We are asking you to vote no and opt out of HB 851. We are protesting because you want to do away with school tax exemption for age 62 and older seniors. You're adding an increase on our water bills starting next year in the next 5 years. You plan an increase in our overall property taxes. You're planning a new SPLOST to vote on 2026, and that agenda item does not specify how long that 2028 SPLOST cycle will run, nor do you even know how much money would be projected to collect. Are you kidding me? While we agree that much is needed to be done in Cobb County, such as stormwater drainage, road upgrades, infrastructures, we get that. We understand that. And yet it was noted that several projects on the 2022 SPLOST are over budget and maybe some overspending. There needs to be better spending accountability and prioritizing. There are needs, but somehow the money is not there. So where will this continual flow of money come from? It comes from us. In order for Cobb citizens to keep up with your spending and tax increases, we, the citizens, we have to take a hard look at our personal spending to accommodate Cobb County's continual tax increases. We have to do our due diligence of balancing our personal household budgets. So we suggest that the board does the same spending evaluation that we must do. Perhaps reduce wasteful spending of taxpayer money used to advertise and promote your pet projects. Perhaps stop overpaying analysts and developers for evaluations of projects, or deleting unnecessary county positions like $150,000 for DEI position. Slush fund for poorly mismanaged taxpayer money. We remember that taxpayers are not your slush fund for poorly mismanaged taxpayer money. We are demanding efficiency and serious prioritizing of budget items for what is truly needed in Cobb County. Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Murray Gray. Been here for about 25 years. Worked as a property tax consultant for many years, and I've been in jurisdictions all over the southeastern United States. Many states base their taxes on 100% of the value of those properties. We passed a measure years and years ago that we were only going to assess people 40% of the value of their home because we were going to save them a lot of money. And you know what? It's a scam. It doesn't matter if we're at 100% of value or we're at 40%. You guys are going to pass a millage rate to meet your needs. And the same thing's going to happen here if you continue to do that. You set the millage rate based on the budget that you have. And you attach that millage rate to the valuation. So you start messing with the values, and you're going to mess everything up. And there's going to be a lot of inequity. And you're taking away the opportunity to fix that. We've got a great system in Cobb County. I think the appraisers do a super job. We've got a good system for appealing those taxes, and you're taking that away from them. By setting these automatic increases into place, I'm assuming, there's so much bad information or conflicting information that's out there about what this is going to do. But if it is that great, give it a few years. See how bad it's going to be for everybody that decides not to opt out and opt in, and then make your decision. Because you have no idea what you're dealing with. You're going to cause more problems than you could possibly imagine by trying to put something as simple as we're going to increase your assessment every year. Look at 2008 when we lost in many areas 80% of the values of your home, and yet. Gosh, look at what you would put taxes on that property for. So stick to what you've got. Stick to the appraisers that you've got, appraising the properties at their fair market value. Throw your 40% on there and figure out what your millage rates are. So nobody seems to be able to figure out that doesn't matter what their values do. The county's going to set it up. You guys are going to sit up there and go, okay, we need this much in money, so let's go ahead and add this. This is how much of a millage rate we need to get there. So it's not. Everybody's associating the increase is going to be with millage rates, and technically that doesn't happen. I've seen lots of jurisdictions that have lowered millage rates. If that's not happening, if that's not going to happen, then maybe we need to look at you guys a little bit closer. And I think a lot of people believe that that's the case. But I believe that the beauty of this is you guys can opt out. And it appears that you're going to, because you had to have these 3 meetings in order to even opt out. So I'm hoping that you'll do that.
Sir, sorry, your time's up.
Hill Wright, the original intent of HB 581 was to create a floating exemption on nearly all line items on your tax bill, ensuring that the taxable home values wouldn't increase just because property values went up. Under this system, the only way for local governments to raise property tax would be explicitly voting to increase the millage rate. But here's a key fact that gets left out of the conversation. Before HB 581, when property values rose, state law required that the millage rate be rolled back to prevent an automatic tax increase. However, local officials would vote to undo the rollback and keep the rate steady, collecting more tax dollars and blaming the increase on rising home values as if they had no control over it. HB 581 is supposed to rein in local officials to make tax increases more transparent, but lobbyists for the local governments hijacked the bill and turned it into a tax increase bill. Now these same lobbyists are here trying to sell it to us, talking in circles instead of telling us what's really in the bill. Why do we need a bill to rein in this board? Why can't you manage without the state having to manage this board? Here's what 581 really does. It locks in an automatic property tax increase every year, even if property values decline, without your elected officials ever having to vote on it. You're expected to tighten your belt so they don't have to. It allows up to 3% sales tax increase by referendum, meaning Cobbs County sales tax could go up to 9% under this bill. It does not cap property taxes despite misinformation about being spread. Elected officials can still vote to raise the millage rate. They just won't be able to hide it as easily. HB 581 removes the fair market value cap on introduced property, allowing them to be taxed higher than their actual value. This will drive up rent significantly. What they don't want you to know, your assessment notice will now show the rollback rate, the rate required by law to prevent an automatic tax increase. But local officials, including Chair Cupid, are comparing the tax increase under 581 to the higher increase she already planned instead of comparing it to the rollback rate, which is what your taxes would actually be with 581. If she were being honest, she would be showing you the true rollback rate both with and without 581. Instead, she's misleading the public to make this automatic tax hike seem like a cut. Why we must opt out? If we don't opt out now, we will be locked in. The state is still changing the bill. They just introduced House Bill 92 to make changes to HB 581. We shouldn't be locked into something with even more surprises coming. But here's the bottom line. We should opt out and tell the state legislators to pass a clean version of the bills. I'm asking the board to opt out, vote yes to opt out of HB 581. Thank you.
Are there any additional speakers? This is my last call for any additional speakers. Okay, we'll go ahead and close the hearing. Bear with me one moment. Commissioners, typically at the end of a public hearing, I'll ask if any of you have any questions. We can do this now or do it in the next item because we will be voting on the resolution following this hearing. So I'll ask you, do any of you want to address any questions? We have our finance director before us, and again, remember we do have representation from our tax assessor and also from ACCG who are here. Commissioner Gambrill.
I do have a question, and Dante, this will be for you. Ms. Wilson read the language that was on the ballot, and on the language on the ballot, it specifically said that local governments could opt out. I know in the changes that the bills have been going through, it had actually been written in there that our local delegation could override the decision of this board. So in other words, if we voted to opt out, our local delegation could take actions to force us to be opt-in. Is that still part of the language that is changing in there?
So I guess I have a multi-part answer to your question. So the language in that constitutional amendment that gave local governments the ability to opt out That's what required the constitutional amendment. All homestead exemptions are created by the General Assembly, both statewide homestead exemptions and local homestead exemptions. Any local homestead exemptions created via a local act of your local delegation at the General Assembly. So it took that constitutional amendment to give local governments, county, cities, and schools the ability to opt out of House Bill 581. As far as changes to House Bill 581, there haven't been any changes that have gone through the entire legislative process, been passed and signed by the governor. So we're still operating under House Bill 581 as it passed last legislative session. Then you'd asked about whether or not the local delegation can opt the local government back in. Under current law, the local delegation cannot opt Cobb County back in under House Bill 581. However, the local delegation, and this is true for any county, city, or school, they have the ability to pass an identical floating homestead exemption that mirrors the provisions of House Bill 581. So it could do the same things, and it would, if they were to pass that, it would go directly to the voters for referendum. But they couldn't put Cobb County back in under House Bill 581 without an additional change in law.
So is there any talk or discussion down at the Capitol of repealing the constitutional amendment vote that was taken last November?
There is no discussion of repealing the constitutional amendment. There is a bill, House Bill 92, as was mentioned, that is looking at some cleanup language for House Bill 581. And that bill's changed a few times throughout the legislative process this year. Most recently, that bill passed the Senate Finance Committee yesterday afternoon. Those changes would allow for, let me back up. So a handful of changes from the House version. It would make it so that if a local government opts out of House Bill 581, that local government would have to hold those same opt-out hearings every year. And if they don't, then they automatically opt back in. But that bill has not.
Please, yes, please let our speakers speak. Our speakers during the public hearing had the opportunity to speak. We ask that you please respect those who are on the mic by giving them that fair opportunity.
So the current status of that bill is that it's passed the Senate Finance Committee, which means it's going to the Senate Rules Committee. There's still plenty of legislative process left. That bill very well may change again. And it's not final law until it passes both chambers in an identical fashion and then is signed by the governor. So as of right now, I'd encourage all to just consider House Bill 581 as it was passed last year and exists and is current valid law.
Okay, because I know you just kind of touched on one of our speakers' questions was, are we going to have to opt out every single year? So from what I'm hearing from you, legislation that is currently being considered does have that language in there, but the language that was passed in November does not.
Correct.
Which, for those in the audience, Mindy Seeger invited you to go down to the Capitol. I advise you to go. So the current bill, because another question was, is if we opt out, can we ever opt back in? And if I'm remembering correctly, under the original bill, once we opt out, we're out for good, correct?
Correct. Right. There is no provision under the existing law for Cobb County to opt back in if Cobb County opts out. Same is true for any county, city, or school.
But is there any language in the current legislation that is down there under consideration that changes that?
Under House Bill 92, the version that passed the Senate Finance Committee yesterday, if that language were to move through the entire process, pass as it exists, and be signed by the governor, then what would happen is for any local government that opts out of House Bill 581, that local government would have to run through the same procedure every year, so it would have to hold the 3 public hearings, advertise them properly, and then pass a resolution affirmatively opting out again. Otherwise, that local government would revert back to being in on House Bill 581.
And then one other question that was raised. because as it stands right now, the value of your home would be locked in as of December 31st of this year, correct? Or was it 2024?
So all properties are valued as of January 1st of each year. And under House Bill 581, it establishes the base year in 2025, and that base year value is whatever the final value was after appeal at the end of 2024. So the 2024 value would carry forward to 2025, and then every year, 2026 and thereafter, it could increase by that rate of inflation determined by the DOR commissioner, which is CPIU.
So one gentleman asked that, let's just say his value got locked in at $500,000, but then the fair market value decreases to $485,000. Would he stay locked in at that 500, or would his basis drop down to the $485,000?
Under House Bill 581, the base year value wouldn't change in that instance, so it would stay at that 500 value. However, that person would be paying on their fair market value, which in the example you gave is $485,000. So the taxpayer isn't harmed by that. They'd be paying at the lower value, not the higher base value.
That's all my questions for right now. Well, wait, Commissioner.
It's not. No. It's not, and I hope you say that. I hope you say that.
Are you letting me speak?
Yes, please. I'd like to turn things over to Commissioner Burrow. Just ask that you give her the opportunity to speak. Her mic is hot at this time.
Thank you, Madam
For those,
Chair.
again, just please respect the fact we may not agree, but we listen to those who we don't agree with because they have the opportunity to be heard. I ask that you please give every speaker up here that opportunity.
Dante, the provisions for House Bill 92, do they also include the extension that's being considered to opt out?
No, ma'am. So the version that came over from the House had a provision in there that would extend the opt-out deadline from March 1st of this year to March 31st. That language was removed in the substitute passed out of the Senate Finance Committee yesterday.
Okay, so that's out.
As of right now,
So
yes, ma'am.
Tonight's do or die. Okay, and then also currently with the appeal process that we have, and you're locked in 2 years, 3 years, whatever, if you win the appeal, how does that, is that appeal process still an option with the opt-out
You're right.
version?
Yes, so whether or not Cobb County stays in or opts out, the appeal process is going to be the same. And the change from last year to this year under House Bill 581, so in 2024, before that bill, if a taxpayer appealed their value, if they submitted written evidence or attended the hearing, whether they won or lost, that decision, that value, would lock for the following 2 years. So it's that first year and the next two. That's how we get the phrase three-year lock.
Okay.
Under House Bill 581, that's changed so that the taxpayer needs to win their appeal and get some sort of value reduction. And that is to curb frivolous appeals where we've seen them in very high volumes, especially from institutional investors. And that shifted a lot of their tax burden to the homeowners and other citizens of the county. But whether or not Cobb County opts out or stays in, that process is going to be unchanged by that decision.
Okay. And then, Madam Chair, are you going to address the speaker's questions that we said we would do later, or? I just asked one of them, but I didn't.
Please go ahead. I
if
know
you had written
Commissioner,
down some.
yes, Commissioner Gamble did as well. I need to highlight as I was taking notes of a lot of the comments, inclusive of the questions. But if you have any questions now you'd like to ask, please
Okay,
feel
well,
free.
that was mine with the appeal process and the extension being considered.
Thank you. Do you have any more questions, Commissioner?
No, ma'am.
Okay, Commissioner Sheffield.
Okay, thanks, Dante. I actually had several questions, but you answered many of them already. But I just want to draw a little attention to the tax increase. It was mentioned earlier that there is a 3% increase, which will effectively raise Cobb's taxes to 9%. Would you mind addressing that for us for clarity?
Certainly. So there is nothing in House Bill 581 that mandates that there be additional sales taxes put to the ballot. All 581 did in terms of sales tax is it created a new option for local governments, the floating local option sales tax, or the FLOST. And should a local government choose to do it, first there's a requirement that the county have a floating homestead exemption or freeze, which Cobb County does, and that all cities within the county that levy a property tax also have a floating homestead exemption or freeze. Assuming that those prerequisites are met, then the county can negotiate with the cities to get an intergovernmental agreement, which would specify the distribution of that tax between the county and the cities, and then any proceeds from that tax are used exclusively for property tax relief in the form of a millage rollback. So whatever is collected in FLOST gets converted to a millage equivalent, and then that number is subtracted from your rollback rate. That's how that works. Whether or not Cobb County stays in under House Bill 581 or opts out of the House Bill 581 floating homestead exemption, there is still the ability for Cobb County or any county in the state to go to a maximum combined state and local sales tax rate of 9%, 4 state pennies and up to 5 local pennies. Cobb currently has 2. If Cobb County is pursuing any additional sales tax, then that's going to require a vote of the Board of Commissioners, and any and all of those sales taxes go to referendum for the public to vote upon.
Okay, thank you. And also, can you touch on the school, senior school exemption? We heard that mentioned earlier today, and we continue to receive emails with respect to concerns of us removing that exemption. Would you mind speaking to that?
No, ma'am. So the senior exemption is unchanged by House Bill 581. Whether the county stays in or opts out, it's not going to repeal or alter any senior homestead exemption. And I think that's the main thing to keep in mind. The floating homestead exemption is separate from that. If Cobb stays in, then the floating homestead exemption applies and the senior exemption gets added on the back end. If Cobb stays out, the senior homestead exemption continues as it's written. The only thing that could change the senior homestead exemption would be a local bill passed by the Cobb County delegation, and then it would go back to referendum for the voters.
So the voters would have to decide to remove the senior exemption?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, all right, thanks. And just shifting a little bit regarding the ballot, and there were several statements shared regarding the wording of the ballot, and it is confusing as most ballot questions are. If you would just share with us how does one go about wording, deciding or determining the wording on the ballot, and to whom it is written, because they are very confusing.
Mm-hmm. So any bill or resolution introduced at the General Assembly is written by the Office of Legislative Counsel. So the General Assembly has its own attorney's office there. They write all those bills. The constitutional amendment language is written in proper legalese to amend the Constitution. It can be difficult to understand, and that's where folks and associations like ACCG, where I work, try to put out information about those ballot questions, what all they'll do, and information about the bills. So, I mean, they're written for the attorneys.
I'm sorry, go ahead. Please, I don't know what was stated, and it may have been in sync with what you were saying. It's just very distracting. Please just I would just refrain from blurting things out. This is probably the 3rd or 4th time I've had to say that.
Did I answer your question, Commissioner Sheffield?
Yes, you did. Thank you. I appreciate that.
Yes, ma'am.
That was all I have, because the other questions were answered during the earlier dialogue with my colleagues. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. Thank you for being here, Dante, and asking questions on all of our behalfs. For those of you who don't know, the ACC represents the county on many matters to protect the interests of the county. And not only is Dante policy analyst with that organization, he is a resident right here in Cobb County. And any impact to you is an impact that he feels. There is no special interest that he gains in sharing his position. His position is to learn about what's going on at the state and to educate us so that we can make a decision that is in the best interest of counties across the state of Georgia. So even though you may not agree with some of the things that he stated, that is his purpose for being here. And I want to let you know I appreciate you being here. And I take a bit of a slight to the adversarial nature of some of the comments towards his work, which is not a fair representation of the amount of work that his organization does to represent Cobb's and the other counties' interests at the state.
Thank you very much for having me.
Thank you. Let me go ahead and go through these questions here. I'll just state too another observation. There's a comment made that those who are realtors, that those who are part of that association are also perhaps not tax-paying citizens and hardworking citizens of this county. And I can assure you that many of us live next to, live with, and know people that work in that industry. And making people seem like the other, ostracizing people, does not help us in better understanding what this does for all of us. And so I would ask that you please be mindful. It makes it very difficult to objectively receive comments from people who are putting their neighbors down. I just want to receive that. Thank you. I'm going to go ahead and speak. And again, I ask for the same level of respect that this board gave you when you spoke, that you would give that. And I know that's difficult for some, but that's what I would ask. I'm going to go through, as I did the last meeting, to see if there are any questions for you to answer or for any of our staff to answer. There's a question that, or a comment made in many of the speakers' presentations that if we do not opt out, we face an automatic yearly property tax increase. Is that so?
No, ma'am. So there's no automatic property tax increase in the bill. What the House Bill 581 floating homestead exemption does, and it's intended to protect homeowners against large increases in their taxable value, is it puts a limit on the amount that their taxable value can increase in any given year. So let's take a hypothetical home and say that it had a value of $200,000 of assessed value, and that home doubled to $400,000 of assessed value. But inflation was only 2% that year, then that homeowner's taxable value increases from $200,000 to $204,000 instead of from $200,000 to $400,000. So it is a measure designed to protect the taxpayers, but there's no automatic increase.
Also, there's a comment made that property tax will rise and says rents will already increase, and I guess property that is for rent will no longer be capped at fair market value. I've heard that a few times. Is there a difference in how we're assessing rental property, whether or not we opt in or opt out?
In my opinion, there's not. I don't see anything in the legislation that changes how those properties are valued. There's still a requirement that all properties in the county be assessed at fair market value.
And we have our tax assessor here. Okay, thank you. Forgive me, everyone. I'm literally just going through all the comments that I jotted down, so it's going to take me a moment. There are questions about the way that this bill was written. Can you please share who writes the language, not the bill, but excuse me, the ballot question? Who writes our ballot questions?
Yep. All the ballot questions, same as any bill or resolution of the General Assembly, is written by the Office of Legislative Counsel, which are the General Assembly's attorneys, to make sure that those questions, bills, resolutions are all in compliance with the law.
Okay. Do we have any control at the local level on how the ballot question is written?
No, ma'am. Whatever is in the resolution will appear verbatim on the ballot.
Okay. And again, you've made it clear whether or not we opt in or opt out, provisions around the appeal and freezing the tax value would remain the same.
It's going to be the same whether Cobb County stays in or opts out. That's correct, although there are changes from 2024 to 2025 based on what was altered in House Bill 581, but that's not contingent upon Cobb's decision to stay in or opt out.
Okay. Excuse me, some of these comments I wrote are redundant, so I'm just looking for unique questions. It was made clear, I just want to emphasize, whether or not we opt in or opt out, the Board of Commissioners does have the autonomy to change millage rates.
Yes, ma'am. There are no millage caps in the bill. County Commission still retains full power to set that millage rate where they deem appropriate.
And there was an assertion made that the millage rate has been going up over time, and just want to ask our finance director about the millage rate over time.
So the board has elected to leave the millage rate flat since 2018 was the last time we did an increase.
Okay. Would the county be getting more money if we opted in versus opting out? There was an assertion made that I highlighted. It says that opting in or staying in the program is dangerous for citizens because it would mean more money for Cobb County.
Whether Cobb County opts in or stays out, Cobb County's existing freeze is going to control as far as property taxes paid that are going to the general fund. If Cobb County opts out, then that means that there will not be a floating homestead exemption applied to the fire fund, which Cobb County's freeze currently does not apply to.
Okay. Again, and the result would that be more or less money for the county if we opted in?
If Cobb County...
Or if we did not opt out, we're already in the program, we have to opt out. If we were to opt out, is that more money or less money for the county based on today's millage?
If Cobb County opts out, then it is... The only effect is on the fire fund, so you won't have the floating homestead exemption applied there, but it'll still depend on what the millage rate is set at.
If the millage were to remain flat as it has since 2018, what would be the result?
Yep. If Cobb County opts out, then that is going to result in more money to the county because there won't be that floating homestead exemption protection applied to the fire fund.
But we don't, the floating homestead exemption currently is only on the general fund. It's not on the fire fund now.
Right. So if Cobb County opts out, then the House Bill 581 floating homestead exemption will not apply to Cobb County's fire fund.
Right.
That'd
be the same
and that
as it
would
is
be
now.
a benefit to the citizens, not to the county.
Right.
So what he's saying, if we were to stay in, the homestead value would be capped.
For Cobb County's fire fund.
And that would result in less money.
Less money to the county.
To the county. But if we opt out, the homestead value is not capped for the fire fund, which would be a greater cost to the citizen.
Yes, ma'am.
Given if the millage rate were to remain flat.
Correct.
Okay.
I misstated anything?
Okay. Does this bill, and I think you've already stated this, so I'm just going to beat this dead horse, whether or not we opt in or opt out, Cobb County sales tax still has the option to go up to 9%?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. and any increase in the sales tax would have to come before voters for a vote.
Yep, it would require a vote of the county commission and then a referendum to the public of Cobb County.
Okay, thank you. Those conclude my questions that I have.
Yes, ma'am.
Highlighted from our speakers. Commissioners, what I'd like to do is then just go into the second matter on our agenda. And if there's any additional discussion, we can take it at that time if you have more questions. Bill, will you be presenting this item as well?
Yes, Madam Chair.
Okay.
So agenda item number 2 is to ask the Board of Commissioners to adopt a resolution to opt out of the statewide adjusted base year ad valorem homestead exemption for Cobb County, Georgia, as defined by Georgia law, and authorize the chairwoman to execute the necessary documents. So again, this is to opt out.
All right. I move that we adopt the resolution as it has been presented.
Second.
Is there any discussion? Okay. I will discuss first, just thank you for everyone who has taken the time to be educated about this matter and to reach out to the county with respect to it. We've had 3 hearings as a part of this opportunity to opt out, and many of you have been attending those, asking your questions, and continuing to share your perspective on this, and that is appreciated. We've also had a series of 9 public community meetings, of which one of the presentations included a review and discussion about House Bill 581. I want to thank all of you who've been a part of that discussion as well. Certainly want to thank our staff for taking the time to help educate us over and over and over again, because this has not been something that has been clear to any of us the first time that we have observed it. And we feel the pain of our citizens who are here as we've done our best to become as educated about this as possible. The questions that we have asked here today are certainly helpful in bringing some clarity to the impact that House Bill 581 will have. And we are very fortunate, let me share, we are very fortunate to live in Cobb. There are 159 counties and only about 30 have a floating homestead exemption like Cobb County has. And so while I recognize that this bill was intended to provide relief for those across all of Georgia's counties who may not have that exemption, we are very fortunate to have that here in Cobb County, which is what makes any change to this good thing that we have very difficult for us to receive and confusing if it's not clear that there is a benefit. It's not made clear with the presentation that I heard today, but I will emphasize that this really just turns on the fire fund for Cobb County because we have enjoyed the homestead float for the general fund. So as was shared today, opting out will result in us doing things the same, which allows for the fire fund to be assessed at the fair market value assessment of your homes. If we were to opt in, the homestead exemption that we have that applies for the general fund would also apply to the fire fund, which can reduce the amount that you're paying for the fire fund if the millage rate stays the same. I have shared, and it has been shared by commissioners, if we see that we don't have enough funds to address the needs in fire, we could raise the millage rate. So even though opting in, if the millage rate stays the same, could reduce the fire fund, whether or not we opt in or opt out, the Board of Commissioners does have the ability to change the millage to meet the needs of the budget. With that being said, yes, I'll go through for all the commissioners. I just wanted to make some general comments, as our commissioners will before we vote, on things that we've observed, that a lot of this rides on the fire fund. The FLOSS, the floating local option sales tax, is still an opportunity that the board has, and you have, because if we want to consider that for Cobb, it has to come back to you for a vote. So there's going to be no imposition of that potential sales tax increase without you and your fellow citizens weighing in on it. But as was shared, most citizens voted on House Bill 581. So education is truly paramount as this is moving forward so people know what they're voting on. And that will be an opportunity for the board to have additional discussion if we decide to move forward with that. With that, I will go ahead and go back to our commissioners for discussion on this matter since we had a motion and a second. I'll start with Commissioner Gamble, then I'll come down to you, Commissioner Brohl and Commissioner Sheffield.
I might regret asking this question, Bill, but I think it's very important. So if this motion fails for us to opt out, and since the fire fund is being talked about, and I know was talked about greatly in the town halls, so yes, the float would then apply to the fire fund, which means technically the citizens would be paying less. Have you done a calculation on what we would need to adjust the millage rate to collect the same amount of money as we did last year to keep the fire fund at its current funding level?
So what we've done, and we've taken a look at that because of the value lock is the same as it was of January 1 of 2024. We budgeted a slight increase in the fire fund based on millage or based on digest growth. We do anticipate, because again, this applies to homesteaded properties. So this does not apply to commercial or rental properties. So we anticipate there'd still be a growth. Would it be as significant? We don't know. So we're going to have to go through that with the digest projections. So the tax assessor is in the process of doing valuations. The first digest projection meeting is scheduled, I believe, for March. If not, yes. So that's when we're really going to be able to do those calculations, because it is an unknown right now is what that digest increase is going to be for fire or general at this point. So that is one of the things that we'd have to monitor. Now, we would say, I would tell you today, we budgeted a 3+% increase in the digest. And if we didn't meet those needs, the board would have a decision to make of, do we, A, increase the millage to cover that deficit, or do you have to look at ways to make reductions? So that would be a board decision of how we'd want to approach that. But it's simply going to come down to what does the digest grow compared to what you budgeted? Because again, this only applies to a portion of the properties located in the fire fund, because homesteaded properties are the only thing included here. So rental, commercial properties would still have an adjustment. Now, I will say this is that going into the 2026 budget, this would be something we'd also have to look at very closely, because as you know, you're going to see at the March work session what the requests are heading into 2026 budget, and knowing what those are going to be, and then making a decision again like you do each and every year. What does that millage rate have to be to cover the requests that the board deem is appropriate? So it's too early to answer until we get that final digest. Once we have that final digest or a preliminary digest, we can begin that calculation.
Okay, I'm kind of having a hard time believing we haven't done those numbers. But, I mean, common sense tells you that if you collect 60% less because you've applied a float now,
so
you're going to have to make up that delta difference by taking the millage rate from, what is it, 2.99 to 4?
So here's why. We will not collect less than we collected last year. So that's the catch. This is designed to keep those levels flat. So you are not, well, even if the board chooses to opt in, and this exemption applies to the fire fund, you will not collect less money than you collected the prior year, because that value is going to be the same as it was the prior year. So the only reason that you would potentially collect less if you had every other property, commercial, rental, drop in value, or the residential homestead properties drop in value. That would be the only way you'd collect less. If they maintain their value or increase, you'd at very least collect the same amount that you collected in the prior year. But there's a different question of how much more will we collect, or what is the difference between what you projected when you did the budget last July. Now you have a homestead in the fire fund that was not contemplated when the board adopted that budget in July, if the board decides to opt in. So those are different scenarios, because it's almost, almost a whole, 9 months later that we're looking into this and seeing, okay, now we may have new rules that apply that was not contemplated when you adopted the budget last July. So I can tell you definitively you will not collect less in the fire fund, but it may not grow as quickly based on the exemption, if that makes sense.
No, and I think we're going to be confusing people
Sure.
through this conversation at this point. Because I know comments were made about the slides that were presented at the town halls, that it was implied that if we opted in, that citizens would see a reduction on their property tax bills
So
due to the fire fund then getting the float.
So I'm going to let Steve answer that a little bit, but I want to say, I think in his example, and Steve can correct me if I'm wrong, he showed what a value would be if the value, what the impact would be on an increased property value. So with the exemption applying, let's say it went up 5%, but the CPI was 2%, they would receive a reduced increase. It will not be a reduction. So I just want to.
Correct. That's exactly right.
Okay, but I guess for clarity from what I've been hearing from citizens based on those slides is that, yes, we showed that, but we never came back and said, okay, yes, this is what it would be, but this is what the millage rate increase would need to be to make sure we stay here. And as the speaker, Mr. Gray stated, you know, it doesn't matter what the basis is.
Agreed.
We're going to raise your millage rate to cover whatever we need.
And Commissioner, you're exactly right. So what you do every year is in July, you adopt the next year's budget. So last July, we adopted the fiscal year 25 budget, which runs from October to September 30th. This July, you will set that millage that you will collect for that fiscal year. So it's always in arrears. So you're going to have a budget number, and then if that, let's say, for example, I'll give you both scenarios. Let's say the digest increased dramatically. The board would have the ability to make a decision, do we want to reduce the millage rate to hit our budget number? Vice versa, if the digest underperformed or had a significant decrease, the board would have to make a decision, do we increase the millage rate to account for that deficit? So it's no different than you'd face that decision each and every year for July, because you're projecting what that's going to look like, and you have to wait until almost June of the following year to get a final digest number to set that millage. So that's why those are always very much linked together. When you do this July, it'll be for fiscal year 26, but in that same meeting, you're going to be voting on the millage rate for fiscal year 25. So those are simply projections, and that's all the budget is, but the board will always have the decision to adjust the millage rate up or down each year to hit that mark or to make up for any change in digest. So you're exactly right. The board has that flexibility, whether you opt in or opt out, to change the millage rate to hit that mark. This will be no different.
Thank you, Commissioner. Commissioner Burrow.
Thank you. Well, first of all, I'd like to say thank you for bringing some clarity to all of this. It's been a long process, but we have met the 3 public hearing requirements and the advertising. And thank you, Stephen. Thank you, Dante, and thank you, Bill and staff. As with things like this and millage budgets, I like to hear from people, and I would also like to thank those that participated. So of the emails I received, 215 said to opt out. 2 said to opt in. So this has been very confusing, and there's been a lot of misinformation or what people thought was included in the bill or wasn't included. But I remember a few years ago when we took money from the fire fund and put 0.13 mils into the debt service, and we finally paid it back by putting the 2.99, raising the fire fund back to where it was. So we can't keep doing that. So I support opting out. I think what we currently have in place and have had for years is better for the citizens and more beneficial to the taxpayers. So thank you all for participating, and thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner.
And also, thank you, Madam Chair, for having 9 additional town hall meetings to discuss this and other topics, in addition to the 3 required public hearings.
Thank you.
Commissioner
I
Sheffield.
just want to thank you guys for presenting the information, and Dante for the time that you spent here with us. And I also thank The Cobb County residents, you all that are here tonight, you've consistently attended the meetings to voice your opinions, and we greatly, greatly appreciate hearing your perspectives. We also received numerous emails, as my colleague just mentioned, so thank you all for sharing your concerns with us, and to the chair for her many town halls. I do support opting out of HB 581. And my support echoes the reasons that were shared here tonight and also by email. But the main reason I support it is because Cobb County's current homestead is far more beneficial than what's offered to the residents over House Bill 581. So we understand why or how this bill can be effective in other counties, because there are a lot of counties that do not offer a homestead exemption, but for Cobb County, we have one of the best, and I'd like to keep it that way by supporting by opting out.
Thank you. I just want to confer with our clerk. We have a motion and a second. I'll call the question. The motion carries 4-0. Thank you. Commissioners, let's go ahead and take a break till 9:05, and we'll come back and resume the rest of the agenda. Thank you. All right, the time is 9:05, and we will resume our Board of Commissioners meeting this February 25th, 2025. We are now at the consent agenda portion of our meeting, where the items on the consent agenda
Chairwoman, I'm sorry.
I'm so sorry, we're at public comment. I'm trying to go through this meeting, and this is not the first time I've done that, and I'm not trying to deprive you of public comment.
I think most of them left anyway.
The camera has pivoted off me to the public. Nobody saw that. We will go back one step and go to our public comment, and then we will go into our consent agenda. Bill, how many speakers do we have?
Well, there's 10, but I think from what I can tell, maybe some of them have already left. But the first one is J.T. Jackson.
Okay. And for any of our speakers, remember to state your name, please, before you begin. There's a timer also. I should have shared it in the prior speakers. There's a timer also on the dais.
Awesome. Well, hey there. I'm J.T. Jackson. Thank you for allowing me this time to speak. I live down in Cumberland, and first, I love living in what I consider to be Metro Atlanta's best neighborhood. So thank you to everyone that has played a role in making Cumberland what it is today. I grew up in Cobb County, and Cumberland wasn't always home of the Braves, so thank you. As the baseball season approaches, I just wanted to ask this board to be considering the small things that we can be doing to enhance the pedestrian experience in the area, such as making sure crosswalks are freshly painted and streetlights have fresh bulbs. I would also love to see a scramble crosswalk implemented at the intersection of Windy Ridge and Interstate North Parkway. This would create a safer experience for both pedestrians and drivers, as well as reduce the workload for the police officers that sit on that southeast corner of the intersection before and after every Braves home game. So I look forward to my neighborhood being the epicenter of baseball this summer when the MLB All-Star Week comes to Atlanta. Hopefully for real this time, they don't pull it. And I hope that this board can help Cobb put its best foot forward for the baseball world. So thank y'all again for allowing me to speak and your continued service to the county.
The next public speaker is Matthew Peck.
Thank you, chairs. My name is Matthew Peck. I am a student at Kennesaw State University and the vice president of a soon-to-be-formed RSO called BRIDGE. It stands for Building Roads in Defense of Guarded Education. We at KSU are excited and scared of many things. Firstly, we are very excited by the upcoming partnership between CobbLink and Kennesaw State University, in which students will be able to use certain routes on the bus line for free. Everyone I've talked to about this has been beyond excited because these routes will allow us to travel directly into the city. We are beyond elated by this, but there are many things that have concerned us. You may be familiar with the story of Alyssa Stringer. She was a pedestrian, a student at Kennesaw, a nursing student, in fact, who was standing on the sidewalk in a crosswalk between Frey Road and Skipspan Connector. A car hit another car as it was performing a U-turn and crashed into her. She had done nothing wrong and she lost a leg. This was a story that was interviewed on Fox 5, 11 Alive, and so many others. Over the last 3 weeks, the people at Bridge just formed. We gained 50 members in the first 24 hours. Over the last 3 weeks, we've reached 150 members. We are extremely passionate and dedicated to solutions, not just for Frey Road, but for everything around Cobb County. Frey Road is a state road, a county-managed road. Kennesaw State University has no say over anything that goes on there. It is also a highway relief road, which means that it's very difficult to get changes implemented, but changes need to be implemented. Hundreds of students cross that intersection every day, and they need to be safe. They don't need their legs cut off. They need safe roads. That's why we at Bridge have proposed several things along with our friends at A Better Cobb and are happy to work with anyone who would be willing to listen to us. We've suggested a sky bridge, such as the one suggested by agenda item 14 that you're going to be voting on later today. We've also suggested a roundabout, which may be more manageable. We also want U-turn lanes so that people coming off of the highway can U-turn before they use that intersection, because U-turning, when I was doing the Fox 5 interview, there was a semi-truck that did a U-turn right near some pedestrians. This happens every day, every hour. It's unforgivable, and it needs to be fixed. But you already have fixed one turn.
Sir, I'm sorry, your time's up. The next speaker is Cameron Hood Crew.
Hello, my name is Cameron Hoodcree. I am also a student at KSU, and I would like to talk about pedestrian mobility and safety both in the county, and I also would like to speak about what the last speaker said, and I would like to see. I've heard about all these injuries, and I would like to see improvements to the intersection and roads near campus. I also have something to say about. I would like to talk about CobbLink, how the referendum failed, and how it should be, how we should reconsider putting it on the ballot. Transit is essential to a community. Probably put it on the ballot in 2026, so when there's not so much going on with the presidential election. But transit is essential to a community and sustainable and safe community because it reduces pollution, traffic, and car fatalities. With transit, good land use is an opportunity We have good land use around Cumberland and Truist Park area as well as 75. There are many places we can get good land use, like Town Center Mall area. If we had a better transit and higher capacity, we could remove parking and more people could ride. We would be more sustainable and not only for Cobb County but for Georgia and Atlanta and the whole basically Georgia would be more sustainable if Cobb County could play their role in trying to expand transit. And thank you very much.
The next speaker is Andre Norwood. Sam Foster.
Hi, Sam Foster. Horseshoe theory is real. Thank you for opting out of HB 581. I didn't really have anything to come talk about today, but speaking is fun, so I just decided to come up and do it. Thank you for taking the crash seriously near Frey Road and Skipsman Connector. Usually when people die due to car fatalities when they're a pedestrian, usually they get blamed for it. But we've seen a good response. I like that the left turn into the parking deck is no longer unprotected. It's a protected turn now. And I also like that Cobb DOT is working with KSU to try and come up with solutions on what to do for the future. That is very heartening to see, and I deeply, deeply appreciate it. I also wanted to talk a little bit about our outlook on pedestrian safety and how we can change our approach to more rapidly respond to these issues when they happen. Right now, we have an approach towards pedestrian safety or any infrastructure project in general where we have to wait for the next SPLOST or we have to wait for a grant to do something to improve safety or to start the next project or to add a sidewalk. When these incidents happen, we should be responsive in a way where we look for short-term solutions that can help fix these issues with solutions that don't cost as much and don't require us to seek as much funding to do them. So what that could look like is for this crash, we could do something like removing slip lanes at that intersection so people don't turn as quickly around corners. And we could do something like that with traffic cones or plastic barriers or something like that. Or for a separate crash, you can think of any different type of crash, a different set of variables. You look at those variables and you say, is there something we can do to emulate a more expensive solution with cheaper materials that could prevent this from happening while we seek a longer-term solution? Yeah, that's it.
Cassandra McCrory. Mitchell Red.
Hello, I'm Mitchell Red, and I live in the Cumberland area of Cobb County. I wanted to speak tonight on my appreciation for crucial Cobb County government services in the face of federal efforts to indiscriminately fire federal employees and often put a black mark on their reputation by indicating it was due to poor performance. I'd say this because of comments from the community at last meeting's AM session where there was an assertion to doge Cobb County and to an insinuation that county employees should be tarred and feathered. Again, I appreciate county services such as parks and recreation, animal services, transportation planning, the analysis of streets, roads that go into safe communities. I feel that to take those things away, to indiscriminately, get rid of county programs, county staff, it would lead to trash-filled public spaces, animals in need, deteriorated roads and sidewalks, and a lack of many other crucial county services. And what would the goal of that be? To simply humiliate crucial county employees who often may not have any form of recourse. All of that said, I also wanted to briefly highlight a traffic pedestrian issue that I've noticed lately. I've noticed that if you are at the corner of, I'll just use, if you are in Cumberland at the AMC movie theater on the corner and you want to cross Cumberland Boulevard as if you're going toward the Chattahoochee River, when that walk signal activates, there's also a green light for the traffic that is sitting to your left on Cobb Galleria Parkway. And I've had many instances where, I've prepared to, the walk sign's white, ready to cross, so I'm crossing, but this person who is on Cobb Galleria Parkway, they're intending to turn right, and they have a green light. So they have a green light to turn, I have a walk sign to walk, and we both feel that we're in the right, and I've got, a Ford F-150 coming a foot away from me, and we both, just look at each other like we're crazy because, I have the walk, he's got the green light. I would make suggestions that perhaps for traffic that is going to turn and cross a crosswalk, that there could be perhaps a right pointing arrow sign that is flashing yellow to let traffic know that use caution. You can go, you can turn if you want to, but use caution because the walk sign is activated. I've seen that in DC and some other areas that I think makes drivers more aware that there's an active crosswalk instead of having to just simply look at the green light and feel free to go no matter what. Thank you for listening, and thank you for your time.
Denny Wilson.
Denny Wilson. Thank you guys for opting out of HB 581. We really appreciate that. I've got something tonight that's probably out of your scope, but we had a plane to crash in a backyard on Hillcrest today. I was out in the front yard working, and I heard this loud crash, and I thought at Felton Lane and Hillcrest that it was probably two cars that collided together. But as I walked down with the fire department being there, we found out that a plane had crashed in my neighbor's backyard. Now, I have contacted Charlie Brown. I have dealt with them on numerous occasions to let them know that their planes are flying too low. And I know that the city of Mableton is here. I don't know if it's out of the scope of services to correct this for the county, but something needs to be done. I've already called FAA, and they told me that if I can read the writing on the plane, then that means that it's too low. And I've been able to call them and say, hey, I've read the writing on this plane, and to this date, nothing has been done. So I found lots of dead birds in my backyard, which lets me know that those planes are flying too low. So, and I think several years ago, we had a plane crash up near the Quick Trip at the corner of Lee Industrial and Mableton Parkway, and it caused damage all the way back up to Lee Industrial. It took the top off of the Quick Trip store. So if there's anything you guys can do to contact Charlie Brown, something needs to be done because those planes are flying entirely too low. Thank you.
The next speaker is Donald Barth. Christine Rosman. Tim Parson. Mr. Harfoot.
Good evening, Commissioners. My name's Craig Harfoot. You did a good job conducting the meeting. And what you thought were people being rude to the speaker, they weren't. It's about, they were real upset with the legislature. So anyhow, it wasn't the messenger, it was the message. So going on from that, I keep saying, right now the feds are trying to cut the federal spending through firing employees. That's a two-edged sword, and then they want to throw $5,000 at everybody and because they're afraid of what they're going to do. But all that is, you got to know that the spigot for all your money coming into the county for the roads and the SPLOST and all that, I wouldn't count on it. I wouldn't count on it at all. And the students here that talking about the roads, well, see, all these roads that we made 4 and 6 lanes wide are very unsafe to cross. And I mean, there should be no pedestrian traffic across 6 lanes of traffic because it doesn't work. And the U-turns are because of things like you did on Lower Roswell Road. You want to put a median in, and so now you can't get into the lane and go another place, so you got to turn and go down a road, do a U-turn, and come back through an intersection. None of that stuff is great. It's like unintended consequences, poor planning. So I know Drew went up to one of the guys, gives him a card, and it's like, yeah, let's get you on the SPLOST thing because we want to put another $2 million bridge up across the road. Well, this is not how we're going to solve the problem. And you got to plan. No more developmental roads with SPLOST. You can maintain stuff, but a better solution for Kennesaw would be, hey, let's use Hope for what it was supposed to be for, K through 12. And then maybe we'll solve the student debt problem. And because we still take some of that money and let them do online courses for low cost from home, and they won't get killed crossing the street. These are the kind of things that we should be looking at. Real solutions, not trying to inflate the economy and the home values to where we can't afford to live in. And the sales tax thing I keep seeing, it'll come. That basically a few rich people will own all the property. It'll look like England. Very few people own everything in England. That's what we'll have again if we don't think about this proactively and keep people in their homes. It's tough to pay the mortgage down.
Mr. Harfoot, your time's up. That concludes the public speakers.
Thank you, Commissioners. We are now at our consent agenda, and bear with me one moment. Okay. Please note that the matters on the screen that were scrolling before the meeting were the items that are on our consent agenda, and it will scroll on the screen after the consent agenda. I do know, Commissioners, that we do have one pink sheet for a change to agenda item number 24, and that is for the purchase of the 5 patrol vehicles, and just making that very clear. Do you have any other requests? I know that there has been a desire to move agenda item number 3 to the regular agenda, and that pertains to the Superior Court clerk. Are there any other changes or matters to note for the consent agenda, Commissioners? Okay, not hearing any, I move that we approve the items on consent as it has been revised, and to authorize execution of the necessary documents by the appropriate county personnel.
Second.
All right, is there any further discussion?
Push the line.
Okay. We'll call the question. The motion carries 4-0. We will now hear agenda item number 3, considering that it has been pulled from the consent agenda.
Good evening.
Good evening.
My name is Libby Blackwell. I'm the Chief Operating Officer for the Clerk of Superior Court in Cobb County. Tonight, the Clerk of Superior Court is requesting the Board of Commissioners accept a reimbursement to the general fund for previously collected mail fees associated with the expedited shipping of passports from the Cobb Clerk of Superior Court in the amount of $83,658.90. The Board of Commissioners has requested the total amount remitted already, which is $43,752.07.
Okay. Thank you. I appreciate
Thank you.
it. So, Commissioners, before us, we are asked to move to accept the reimbursement to the general fund for the previously collected mail fees associated with the expedited shipping of passports from the Cobb County Superior Court Clerk pertaining to fiscal years 21 and 22, in a total of $83,658.90. And I move that we approve that agenda item as it has been presented. Is there a second? It is. Yes. That's okay. There's a motion to approve this as it has been presented. Is there a second?
Second.
Okay, is there any discussion? Yes, Commissioner Burrow?
Thank you, Libby, for being here in the
Thank you.
clerk's in her stead. The amount here, I know the 2 years are separated as far as the amounts, but they total the $83,658.90. But I just want to clarify that that is for the expedited fees, shipping fees that were inappropriately or incorrectly taken in years 2021 and 22 only. It's only pertains to those 2 years.
That is correct.
From when and I know that it was before us back then, but we didn't have a proper accounting to know that if that was correct or not, and so we pulled it from our agenda. But I see now it's coming back a couple years later, and I do agree that it has to be reimbursed and paid back, but I just want to make sure that it's designated that it's for those 2 years only, and that this, as it went into the personal funds of the clerk, that we will be reimbursed out of the personal funds to pay it back. And I don't know if that is a personal check or how that is going to be done and the timeline for when we can expect the payment.
Okay. Let me answer each of those questions separately. As far as the timeline to repay it, the check was written back in 2022, and it's ready to be delivered again. So it can be delivered tomorrow.
Okay.
Okay.
To finance?
Yes,
And that will go back
absolutely.
into the general fund, correct? Bill?
Absolutely, yes. And I believe your other question was the accounts. The accounts, it was all placed into one account. It was not separated between the two. It is now being separated between the two, the passport fee and the expedited fee. So they now go into, they're two separate funds.
Okay, and those are, the expedited fees are turned over monthly to the county now for the last 2 years?
That
but
is correct.
I had asked also for a report of that.
Yes.
And we didn't get it before this meeting, so.
Right, I'm sorry, my microphone didn't work at the other meeting, but it's $43,752.07 is the total remitted.
For 2023 and 2024 total?
Yes, $43,752.07.
Okay, and that's been delivered to the general fund, Bill?
Yes.
Okay. And then in the future reporting, will we have that itemized separately for the expedited fees to verify that they are going into the general fund?
Yes, it currently is a
Okay.
separate item
Okay,
on the report.
thank you, and thank you for being here.
Thank you.
Thank you. Commissioners, do you have any other questions? Commissioner Gambrill.
Just, so you said that the check would be delivered tomorrow because it's been ready since 2022. I'm assuming a new check will be issued because it's more than 6 months old?
Absolutely.
Okay, I just wanted to verify that. But then also, you made a statement that the Board of Commissioners requested this.
Right.
I was a little surprised at that statement because the Board of Commissioners has no oversight on the Clerk of Superior Court collecting the fees for the passports.
It was my understanding that simply it was needed to be an agenda item, and so that was where it may have come from Finance County.
So, Commissioner, I just want to make sure we're understanding your question. Are you asking, did the Board of Commissioners request the agenda item, or did they request the amount that has been remitted? Because I think that was what Libby was addressing.
The way I took the statement is that the Board of Commissioners was requesting this $83,658 from the clerk. We cannot request that money from the clerk. I mean, it is truly up to the clerk to be honest, transparent, open, and reimburse the county for the fees that she has collected. So the way I took that statement is that we as a board were requesting her to repay this money where we can't make her repay this money. So I just want to make it clear that, you know, as a member of this board, I did not authorize or vote to go to the clerk and say, you have to repay us this money.
That is correct.
This is something the clerk, under the guidelines that she does the passports,
Right.
she should have been doing all along.
Right.
And had not.
The accounting was kept the same from the previous clerk.
The what?
She just stated that the accounting had been kept the same as from the previous clerk, but
Right.
I'm not aware of an issue with the previous clerk keeping expedited fees. So I don't know, Bill, if you're ready to talk about that, but I don't really think we need to. But I just wanted to make it clear that your statement that the Board of Commissioners requested this, I take issue with that statement because, again, we cannot request the clerk to pay the Board of Commissioners.
I just would like to interject here because I did have this conversation with Bill. We can't require anything, but we can ask anything of our constitutional officers. And Bill and I meet monthly, and at the top of the year, I knew this was something that was outstanding, and he and I did discuss it. So it's not that we mandated or required anything. This
Right.
was something that I knew was left on a list of other matters that I discussed with him when I came back into office. And so there was a discussion, I perceived, between his office and the clerk's office that resulted in this agenda item.
Absolutely.
But I would agree that there was no coercion, but it can be perceived that the request was made, that it could have been prompted from the discussion that I had with our CFO.
Thank you for that clarification. Let me restate this. I said tonight the Clerk of Superior Court is requesting the Board of Commissioners accept a reimbursement. Okay. I'm not sure that, maybe I read that too quickly, but the Clerk of Superior Court is requesting the Board of Commissioners accept the monies.
Thank you.
Does that help?
Yes, I perceive so.
Thank you.
Thank you. Commissioners, are there any other questions pertaining to this? All right, we have a motion, a second. I'll call the question. The motion carries 4-0. Thank you, Libby.
Thank you.
We will now go on to the regular portion. This is the regular portion of our meeting, but we will go into the tab that we had originally listed first, which was our county manager tab. And we will hear this evening from our deputy county manager.
Good evening, Chairwoman, Commissioners, Madam County Manager. Our item tonight is to ask the Board of Commissioners to approve a proposed timeline, notice to cities, and a resolution for the consideration of a 2028 special purpose local option sales tax, better known as SPLOST. Now, some might ask, well, we're here in 2025 and this is a 2028 SPLOST. However, a lot has to happen for that ballot issue to even be, or the issue to be placed on the ballot. So on the second page of your agenda is a proposed timeline that will take us from tonight's meeting all the way up to a possible vote on November 3rd of 2026 next year. A couple of items to bring to your attention. You will see that the asterisk items are items that will require the Board of Commissioners to vote. These subsequent attachments, the model letter to the cities as well as the resolution, lays out the initial meeting with the mayors, which would be scheduled for June 25th of this year, to sit down with the cities, discuss a possible SPLOST program. Then there are some deadlines as far as county staff to submit draft project lists. And then in January and February, those months are reserved for public input, taking it out to the citizenry based on the draft project list that is submitted to you by staff. Once those are concluded, the board will once again meet to approve the final SPLOST project list, taking into account input that is received from the residents. And on that same night in April, the cities will submit their final list for inclusion in the SPLOST book. In May, the Board of Commissioners would approve the IGA, or the Intergovernmental Agreement, which would then be sent out to the cities for them to sign. And then the main question that the board would approve is on June 23rd of next year, when you would vote to place the issue on the ballot. And then we would have, of course, our deadlines to get it to elections, and then November 3rd of 2026 would be that vote. So therefore, we're asking the board to approve the timeline, as well as the model letter and the resolution to inform the cities of the consideration of a 2028 SPLOST program.
Thank you. Commissioners, I move that we approve this agenda item as it has been presented.
Second.
Are there any comments or questions? Yes, Commissioner Burrow.
Jimmy, I think it's prudent that we do start early because of the projected list and everything that has to be ironed out before it's a referendum for the voters to decide. But that's the key. It is if it passes this board, it will be a referendum for the voters to decide with a complete project list. Is it too premature to set a cap on the number of years? Because I think that's a big question in the minds of the public. You heard it tonight. There's no, is it a 4-year SPLOST? Is it a 6-year SPLOST? You know, the maximum since I've been here, or ever, is 6 years, and that's what we're currently under. So, you know, I'd feel better if we could say it wouldn't be more than 6 years or put a limit on it, but is that premature until we get the list?
It is very premature to make that statement now, before meetings are held with the cities, before a list of proposed projects are seen. Now, the max that it can be is 6. The actual, if we were doing one alone, 5 years would be the maximum amount of time for a SPLOST. However, if we get intergovernmental agreements signed by all of our cities, all of our 7 cities, that entitles it to a 6th year. But 6 is the max.
Okay.
But this is very early in the process. We don't know what type of program the board and the cities are going to talk about, whether it's heavy in transportation again, whether it's heavy in building renovation, bridges, culverts. Until you have that type of information, it's hard to really make those type of decisions.
Okay. Okay.
Any other comments or questions? We'll call the question. The motion carries 4-0.
Thank you.
Thank you. We are now at our transportation tab.
Good evening, Chairwoman, Commissioners, County Manager. DOT has 4 items for your consideration this evening. Our first item is to recommend the Board of Commissioners adopt a resolution authorizing the submission of a Transportation Alternatives Program grant application to the Georgia Department of Transportation for Powder Springs Road Trail, project number X2706, and authorize the Chairwoman to execute the necessary documents.
Commissioner Gambrill.
So moved.
Second.
Is there any discussion? Call the question. The motion carries 4-0.
Thank you. Our next item is to recommend the Board of Commissioners approve project number B2745, task order number 2, to the 2022 master task order contract with BCC Engineering LLC, doing business as Heath and Linebeck Engineers Incorporated, in an amount not to exceed $230,243 for engineering design of King Springs Road sidewalk, authorize the corresponding budget transactions, and further authorize the Chairwoman to execute the necessary documents.
Commissioner Sheffield.
So moved. Second.
Any discussion? Just happy to see this project. It'll be very helpful for that stretch. All right, call the question. The motion carries 4-0.
Thank you. Our next item is to recommend the Board of Commissioners approve a contract with Deep South Industrial Services Incorporated in an amount not to exceed $936,839.80 for resurfacing 2025 countywide crack sealing, project number B2922, authorize the corresponding budget transaction, and further authorize the Chairwoman to execute the necessary documents.
So moved.
Second.
Is there any discussion? Call the question. The motion carries 4-0.
Thank you. And our final item this evening is to recommend the Board of Commissioners approve a contract with Bartow Paving Company Incorporated in an amount not to exceed $2,095,745.41 for South Gordon Road at Pisgah Road, project number B2310, authorize the corresponding budget transactions, and further authorize the Chairwoman to execute the necessary documents.
Commissioner Sheffield.
So moved. Second.
Any discussion? Call the question. The motion carries 4-0. Thank you, Drew.
Thank you.
We are now at our second public comment, and I believe there are no speakers, which will take us to the Commissioner's public address. Commissioner Gamble, you can begin when your slides are on the screen.
As we wrap up the month of February, here's one final tip to keep your heart strong. Kidney and heart health are closely connected, and when one is affected, the other may be at risk. Maintaining a healthy diet can help protect against both heart disease and kidney disease, so with the warmer weather, be sure to get out and walk. And lastly, we're going to start our 40 days of giving to donate essentials during this Lenten season. From March 5th to April 17th, you can donate 40 essential items to help others. Suggested donations include non-perishable food, baby supplies, personal care items, and clothing. Drop-off donations at the Cobb County Government Building at 100 Cherokee Street in Marietta. Collection boxes are located near the second floor security checkpoint and the third floor foyer. Join us in restoring hope through the gift of giving. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner. Commissioner Burrow.
Thank you. Renovations continue at Mountain View Aquatic Center, located at 3131 Hong Way Northeast, Marietta. The Aquatic Center will be closed March 11th through the 14th for improvements. Please visit the Aquatic Center starting March 15th. On March 12th, we will be having an open house. DOT and I will be hosting an open house March 12th from 6 to 8 p.m. at Rocky Mount Elementary School, 2400 Rocky Mountain Road, Marietta. This will be a public meeting to educate the public about the upcoming roundabout project at the intersection of Trickham Road, at Eula Drive, and Rocky Mountain Road. Again, that's 6 to 8 p.m., Wednesday, March 12th. The Town Center CID Alliance is hosting the Noonday Shanty. It's a 5-10K run, and it will be this spring on Saturday, March 22nd. Run along the Noonday Creek Trail while supporting future green space and trail projects in the Town Center area. The race is an official qualifying event for the Peachtree Road Race. For more information, go to towncentercid.com/noonday-shanty. And then please sign up for my newsletter, cobbcounty.org/Burl. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner. Commissioner Sheffield.
Okay, thank you, Chair. District 4 news and updates. Last week, I had the honor of participating in the ribbon cutting for the Cobb WorkSource Center in Mableton. This full-service WorkSource Development Center offers job seekers and businesses a wealth of free resources, including access to a computer lab, job search assistance, professional workshop, literacy services, employment placement, and funding for skills training. Thank you to all who have supported this project, with a special acknowledgement to Chairwoman Cupid for her vision over a decade ago in bringing this much-needed resource to the South Cobb community. Scan the QR code on the screen to access the Cobb WorkSource website or visit worksourcecobb.org. Join me in Planning Commissioner Michael Hughes for February's In the Zone community meeting, 7 p.m. Wednesday evening, February 26th. Our monthly meeting offers an excellent opportunity to engage with the community, stay informed about zoning decisions, and discuss upcoming zoning applications in District 4. Please email zoe.schofield@cobbcounty.org for the meeting link. The Cobb County CDBG Program Office is planning for the 2026 through 2030 Consolidated Plan, including the 2026 Annual Action Plan and Analysis of Impediments to Fair Housing Choice. This plan helps identify community needs related to housing, economic development, homelessness, public facilities, and affordable housing. Public input is needed. We encourage your participation in the survey to ensure all community voices are heard. Responses are confidential and accepted until April 30th of this year. Residents can also attend scheduled workshops at 2 p.m. Wednesday, March 5th at Schweitzer Library and 2 p.m. Wednesday, March 19th at Sewell Mill Library. For more information, contact Cobb County CDBG office at 770-528-1455 or info@cobbcountycdbg.com. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner, and thank you, all of you, for tuning in today and for being a part of our discussion. We look forward to seeing you at our next Board of Commissioners meeting. Have a great evening. We're adjourned.